Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to be doing another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. This particular video will be for standard best of one. If you're looking for best of three, Explorer, Historic, try to cover these all weekly. You can always check the playlist for the most recent video. For this particular video, we're getting the data from Untapped.gg, what you see on the screen, companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client, tracks win rates, loss rates for yourself, as well as aggregating for this stats. And this does like deck collection, stuff like that. Link is in the bio if you want to get started with it. I apologize in advance if I'm a little nasally. I'm still getting over being sick, so I appreciate, or I apologize there for kind of a nasally tone to this week's video. So notably with this week, it is the first week that we're starting to get data in for the most recent set, March of the Machine Aftermath, which is basically a 50 card DLC in real life. Thus far I think there's like 3 cards in the set, maybe 4 that are actually like constructed playable. Largely what I've been seeing is a lot of just kind of casual EDH fodder, so I'd probably say wild cards versus cracking packs for this set, just in terms of like playability, but we'll cover it through. This is still only a couple days of data for this particular set, so it's still fairly new. We'll probably wait another week or so, see where things settle, and then get a better idea if there are any impactful cards from the set itself. So we are looking May 9th through the 13th. Diamond to Mythic rank, 45,000 matches of best of one were played. And the top performing deck is Mono White Humans, Mono White Aggro. So there's kind of 2 versions that are going around. So this is kind of the stock version that's been around. Nothing's really changed from the previous set. It's a base white aggro deck with like a human sub-theme. So you have Hopeful Initiate as a 1-drop that gets larger in terms of training. You have Skrell for protection, Lay Down Arms as removal with the 22 planes. Guardian of Nubenalia, pseudo indestructible by discarding stuff, allows you to enlist to get scry ability and added power. Trepid Adversary as a pseudo lord effect by kicking it. Thalia for tax, Adeline to go wide, Brutal Cathar's removal. Steel Seraph, while it does have 6 cost in the casting, it's generally going to slot in here in the 3-drop slot in terms of the curve by casting it for its prototype. The big thing here is giving either something like flying to an Adeline, or oftentimes just the lifelink can help offset in a lot of the races. Think against like mono red, or even soldiers, or like the other aggressive decks just kind of pushing through. As well as notably, it is an artifact, so it doesn't get hit by Go for the Throat. And then these versions are playing 3 copies of Phyrexian Vindicator, 4 mana, 5/5. If basically any sort of damage that's dealt to it gets canceled out, and then you get to redirect that damage. So anything in terms of combat, burn, anything of that nature, you basically need hard removal or exile for it. So there's that version there, and while it's not the next in terms of sequential win rate, it is kind of a line, so I want to show, and this is a Mono White's Humans list. So I actually have a video of another Mono White Humans list. I actually tried 2 different versions, one with Wedding Announcement, one with just like Lord of the Ground creatures. Tried the new Elspeth Resplendent in there, so that's up on YouTube if you want to check out some gameplay of the deck. But we got from Aftermath a uncommon, which I think is actually one of the playable cards from the set. So Coppercoat Vanguard, 2 mana, 2/2. Each other human you control gets a boost of power of 1 and has ward 1. So these are just like minor things, but it goes a long way. Like your Thalia now being a 3/1 first striker, can attack into Trespassers, like any sort of 3-power creature, and win in combat. It makes all the Adeline tokens that attack in be 2 power, as well as ward. If you kind of stack that in addition with Thalia, now your opponent's removal spells cost 2 more. And it's just a nice kind of protection effect. This version is also running Recruitment Officer in the 1-drop slot over Skrelv to provide some card advantage. You still have the kind of same elements, but with the addition of Anointed Peacekeeper in here over the Steel Seraph as a tax effect to hit your opponent's hand. So kind of about a 5%, 4 or 5%. Actually, it's closer to 6. 6% win rate, but we are seeing a lot more games of this particular mono white humans list get played. From there, we move to mono red aggro, and this is pretty much the stock list. We will get to some new decks, don't worry. The two kind of staples of the format are still white-based aggro and red-based aggro. The white-based being like what we saw, or soldiers. So this is kind of your stock. It's the Thundering Raiju version, 3 Dubious Monarchs, Squeeze. You got your Feldons in there, 3 of Strangles, just to kind of combat with more of these creature-based decks. And then like I like 2 Mishra's Foundries in the mono red decks. I've seen some decks try to run like 3 plus a Myrex. It screws up your curve when you're trying to go double 1-drop on turn 2. Just having the colorless land. You want to draw one of these later in the game, not necessarily in your opener. We won't go into too much detail. This has been pretty much a stock list for the last couple of weeks. You want to hit your opponent hard, fast, and then just kill them probably turn like 4 or 5. We then go to Orzhov Control, 62% win rate. So this is kind of a Planeswalker, kill all things deck. So in terms of removal, you got Cut Down, you got March of the Other Rolly Light, you got Fateful Absence, you got Go for the Throat. Liliana can be used for the down tick. You have 4 Wandering Emperors for removal. Invoke Despair, Sunfall, which exiles all your opponent's creatures, given that you don't really have tangible creatures. But it is a card that like sweeps it up, and then you get to get an Incubate token, so it's kind of a win condition and a sweeper all in one. And then Farewell is a card that hasn't been seeing as much best of 1 play, but we'll get to it. There's been a big influx of enchantments as well, like Enchantress decks, and this card's just obviously wrecks them to no end. But then you have your Planeswalker package, Liliana, as we mentioned, Archangel Elspeth makes tokens, Sorin makes tokens, gives you card advantage. Emperor gives you tokens. Kaya, just a big powerful planeswalker. If you can get to it, drains it, gives them card advantage, exiles your opponent's best thing. Vraska proliferates as well, so it can kind of help you ult your planeswalkers faster. And then some wedding announcements for some more tokens, and then Reckoner Bankbuster for card advantage. From there, we go to Azorius Soldiers. Again, another deck that hasn't seen too much innovation. The one thing that you might want to try out in these decks, if you are interested, is a couple copies of the Coppercoat Vanguard. I could see that seeing some numbers. Everything in your deck other than the Yodian and the Valiant Veteran is a human, so you do get some utility there. This doesn't make soldier tokens. It doesn't make human tokens, it just makes soldiers, so it's something of note in that respect. But pretty clean 4-ofs of pretty much everything except the Harbins. 3 of his legendary. Your Sky Strike gives you some card advantage and evasion, and then more tokens, and then Myrel just kind of snowballs and makes a lot of tokens in the particular deck. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think you should trim down to 1 island and then just increase the number of Adhikar wastes here, and then probably just like more planes. You only have 2 blue cards, and you have enough like random blue producing sources that you're going to get hurt more not having whites than having 2 blue in your opener. Then we go to Selesnya Enchantments, and this is the deck not this particular list, I'll show you my list, but this is the archetype I've been playing a lot the last 2 months. I've really enjoyed it, and we got a big upgrade in the term with Calyx Guided by Fate. So 3 mana, 2/2. They finally made our boy Calyx playable. I cracked 2 full arts and a full art foil from my Eldraine booster, and they saw no play. But when Calyx enters the battlefield, or another enchantment enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on target creature. Note, this is the Constellation ability, so it's not cast, it's when it enters the battlefield. So if you have anything like a Saga that flips, it enters the battlefield. If you have a battle flip and it enters as an enchantment, it triggers. And then whenever Calyx or an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you get to create a token that's a copy of non-legendary enchantment you control. You can only do it once per turn, but this is really impactful because you can do stuff like copy your removal and seal it from existence, or ossification. You could copy your boost in terms of power, copy your card advantage. So there's a lot of utility there. So this is the more aggressive version of the deck. The one I've been playing is more mid-range focused, and I find it a little bit more consistent. This can output a large amount of damage. Turns where you go like Generous Visitor into Kami, into like drop a bunch of enchantments, very powerful. Kami gets a lot of boost in terms of power. You have Weaver of Harmony here that gives a boost to your enchantment creatures. You have 5 pieces of removal. Mashiko powering up stuff like Kami is also really big, given that it has Trample. Audacity is another way to give Trample to your effects. And then they're playing 4 of the Invasion of Theros. So my perspective, I don't like these battles in best of 1, especially with these very linear decks. To tap out on turn 3, we've seen the decks thus far. They're very aggressively focused. If you're tapping out on turn 3 to tutor something, and in this deck, you really only can tutor, your only auras are Ossification or the 2 Audacities. So you're playing a 4 of card that can only tutor 5 things. So if you draw it, whatever it may be. Understand it could flip, but you're not actually impacting the board that turn. When you do flip it, it is a pretty powerful effect, but you do have to kind of hit it with that damage. So you are kind of giving up 4 damage. So when it has lifelink and indestructible, as long as you control 3 other enchantments, and then whenever another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. Like I said, I don't like playing these types of effects in best of 1. I find with this deck, especially because you are going more aggressive, you want to be very linear. And I think there's just better options you can play, even if it's a little bit more removal. But those are kind of my thoughts on that kind of interaction. So I'll show you my version here. So Untapped tracks the last 2 seasons. I've been playing this for 3 seasons. I was 21-5 before this season, and then went 9-3 with this current iteration. So I'm 30-8 with the deck. You can see I'm on version 5 of this kind of go around. I've been toying around with a couple different pieces here and there, and where I've kind of settled, Catilda's very powerful in this deck, and I think it's something that should be played in here. Again, just looking at being proactive in nature, it's effectively 2 cards. It scales and gets larger. It can't be hit by like Blood Tithe Harvester. It gains you life. It can just stonewall your opponent. There's been so many games where I've just raced my opponent in the sky because they can't keep up. They hit me for like 10, but then I gain 10 life back. And then when it dies, you get to also have the equip ability from your graveyard. So I'm on like same commune, Generous Visitor. I'm on 4 Circle of Confinement, 4 Ossification as my removal spells. I was finding that with the low to the ground aggressive decks, you really want to interact on 2. It also plays nicely when you have Jukai Naturalist out because it gives you the ability to more consistently be able to double or triple spell on turn 3 with the cost reduction. These 2 mana enchantments also are really good because if you need to, the Thalia attacks can hurt these decks sometimes. I am more mid-range focused, so I do get hit a little bit more by Thalia, but it allows me to have, especially with Jukai, just reduces the cost, or even at 3 mana, like Circle Confinement, if you're on the play, your opponent Thalia is on 2, you untap, you have 3 mana, you can exile their Thalia still. I went down to 1 Seal to existence. While Seal is very flexible in that it can hit any permanent, non-permanent, these just hitting creatures or planeswalkers respectively makes it a little bit better, but I find just 1 copy here. I'm on Wedding Announcement. The big thing with Wedding Announcement gives you a lot of early blockers, gives you a Lord effect, and then allows you to have pseudo card draw by attacking with 2 or more creatures, which helps in the deck. Then you can also copy it with Calyx, and that's a really proactive thing you can do by just getting more copies of Wedding Announcement. I was playing 4 Hallowed Hauntings at first, but with the addition of Calyx, I went down to 3, just kind of lowering the curve a bit. But depending on the nature of the meta, if things slow down a bit, if there's more red-black that comes out, then I would cut the Seal to existence perhaps, and then go up another copy of the Hallowed Haunting. I really like this deck. I've had a lot of fun with it. Calyx is really, really good. Started with a single copy, went up to 3. I think 3, just given it's legendary. If it wasn't legendary, it'd be a clean 4 of no questions asked. So from there, we go to Dimir Toxic, a deck that would not expect to see this high of a win rate, 57%. So you're trying to kill your opponent with Toxic, but in the non-green white version. So Bilious Skull Dweller. Constructed All-Star? Maybe? Nah. 1 mana, 1/1 Death Touch, Toxic, makes blocking awkward. Either your opponent's got to trade unfavorably or takes the toxic damage. You have Voidwing Hybrid. So this is another evasive toxic threat that when you proliferate, you can return it from your graveyard to your hand. Plays nicely with Liliana since you can discard it and get that value. Not gonna lie, I don't know what this Venser does. So 2 mana, 1/3, lifelink, toxic 1. Whenever you proliferate, choose one. If you don't control a creature named the Hollow Sentinel, create the Hollow Sentinel, a 3/3 legendary Phyrexian artifact token. And then target artifact you control gains flying and lifelink on the turn. Okay, so just kind of another toxic threat that makes some bodies. So you have Anticipate with Proliferate and Experimental Augury. You have a counterspell, so Mana Leak, or I guess Make Disappear, but if they're corrupted, it's just counterspell for 2 mana. Anoint with Affliction, early creature removal, that then scales if they're corrupted, so flexible removal there. Chrome Host Seed Shark, Mini Shark Typhoon, makes you some tokens while you're casting other spells. Plays nicely because all the tokens put counters on them, so it is a way you can proliferate those counters on it as well. Distorted Curiosity is basically, once they're corrupted, it's 1 mana, draw 2, and then Vraska to proliferate some values there. You have the Myrex in the mana base. We then go to Rakdos Midrange, so this is the list that won the PTQ. It hasn't really been changed for best of 1. To be honest, if you're playing this in best of 1, I would suggest cutting up Light Up the Night, cut Duress, play the 4th cut down, and then probably either play the full set of Trespassers or play Brotherhood's End. There's a lot of go wide decks, and Invoke Despair is not great against go wide, and then just the Brotherhood's End is more flexible of a card just to hit your opponent's stuff. It's your go-to Fable, Shieldred, kill everything, Blood Tithe Harvester, Invoke Despair, double it with Chandra kind of deck. This is the most like represent best of 3 is basically just all this deck at this point. Very flexible. This is a deck that's much better in best of 3 because you can bring in specific answers. You can go up to 4 Duress, you can get rid of the bad cards, add the good cards, and there's typically a little bit less all-in hyper aggro, which you're not pre-boarded for. From there, we go to Naya Humans, and this Naya Humans list at 55% win rate has got an additional new Sigarda. Sigarda just keeps coming. So this is Sigarda, Font of Blessings, 4 mana, 4/4 Angel. Flying, other permanents you control have hexproof, so it can't be targeted by your opponent's spells. And then you can cast angels or human spells from the top of your library. So a nice little card advantage engine on the top end. You're pairing that with the other Sigarda as a Lord effect that has Coven that gets you some card advantage, Halana and Alana that can boost up the power of your team, give them haste, very powerful card if left unchecked. And then you're just playing a bunch of humans. So you have your Coppercoat Vanguard, Adelins, basically everything we've seen up to this point, but you also have Malira that can be protection against removal. You exile it instead of the other creature dying. And then some Valor Stance, both as protection and aggression and removal against like Shieldreds or your opponent's big stuff. Plaza Heroes for your legendaries, Secluded Courtyard for your humans, and then you have the off-colored lands to cast your other spells. And then lastly, Jund Fight Rigging. I don't know if this deck's good, but it looks fun, and sometimes fun is all you need. 54% win rate, and basically what you're trying to do with this deck is ideally have Fight Rigging on 3, cast a big dumb thing, so Archfiend of Dross or Shakedown Heavy. You put a counter on it, you get to 7 power, and then you get to cast like Breach the Multiverse, Atali, Titan of Industry kind of at the top end. The other cards, you got like Gix Command in here, Shieldred, Contagious Vorak, proliferating or hitting your line drops. I don't know what this does. Enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a land from among them. Which is an odd card to have in there. You're probably better off with like another Bank Buster, or to be honest, like cut this, cut these, cut this, play the cut downs and the full, go for the throats. You just need to be able to interact. This deck should be playing 4 Shakedown Heavies as well. So I'll link this, but this kind of needs some updating to it. I wouldn't say this is proficient. The general idea is cool, kind of playing into this top end big threats, but I would say you want to refine some of these numbers. Like, you're going to die to early aggro. If you're playing Floriferous Vine Wall, which is the word of the day, Floriferous. In any case, that wraps it up for the week for Best of One. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking, if there's any breakout cards you've seen from the new set. And we are continuing our goal, stretch goal of 10,000 subs by the beginning of June. We're closing in at 8,600, so if you can, drop a sub, free, easy, and helps out the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you have a great one, and stay safe out there.